The following is a summary of the Sicha of Shabbos Parshas Balak, Tov Shin Nun. In the year Tov Shin Nun, Yud Beis Tammuz was the 110th birthday of the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Frierdiker Rebbe was born in Tov Reish Mem, and from Tov Reish Mem to Tov Shin Nun was 110 years. Everything is Bahashgacha Pratis, especially the Yom Huledes, the birthday of a Nasi. As it says, HaNasi Hu HaKoil, the Nasi is everything. And since this year, the year Tov Shin Nun, is 110 years from the Frierdiker Rebbe's birthday, it's understood that there starts this year a new shlav, a new step forward in the previous Rebbe's avodah, ubasa reisha gufa ozel. After the head goes the body, which is the entire avodah of the generation. And this avodah, the avodah of Yud Beis Tammuz, of spreading Yiddishkeit and Afotzas HaMayonos Chutza, on the day which the Frierdiker Rebbe wrote, Shaloi oisi bilvad goel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not only me did Hashem redeem on Yud Beis Tammuz, Kiyem es kol mechabebei Toraseinu HaKadosha, but all those who held Torah precious, Shomrei mitzvah, who kept mitzvahs, v'gam eis asher b'shem Yisrael yichuneh, even those who even have a nickname as a Jew, they were also redeemed on Yud Beis Tammuz. And therefore it's understood that on this Yud Beis Tammuz, and on the days afterwards, there needs to be a new release of energy in the avodah of the Rebbe. The number 110 is stated clearly in Scripture in reference to the years of Yosef. It says in one pasuk, Vayechi Yosef mea ve'eser shanim. Yosef lived for 110 years. It also says there, Vayomos Yosef ben mea ve'eser shanim, that Yosef died when he was 110 years old. Now we need to understand, why does the Torah tell us twice that Yosef was 110 years old? And moreover, in the first pasuk, the emphasis is that Vayechi Yosef, Yosef lived for 110 years, and in the second pasuk it says Vayomos Yosef, that Yosef died when he was 110 years. One can possibly say that these two pasukim depend on the different opinions in Chazal as to whether Yosef had an arichas yomim, longevity, or niskatzru yomav, his days were shortened. The Gemara in Brachas Daf Nun Hey Amud Aleph says, Mipnei ma meis Yosef koidem le'echav. Why did Yosef die before his brothers? In other words, he didn't live as long as his brothers. Shehinhig barabonas, because he took a governmental position. Similarly, it says in Medrash that he died 10 years before he was supposed to. So from these Chazal, it's clear that his days were shortened. However, in Medrash Mishlei, it says, Mitoich she'omad v'nischazek b'chvoid aviv b'Mitzrayim, that since Yosef exceedingly honored his father Yaakov in Mitzrayim, Zocha la'ateres seva, he merited old age. Shenemar, as it says, Vayar Yosef le'Ephraim b'nei Shileshim, that he saw Eineklach and Ureineklach, which was an arichas yomim, and just like the ateres seva, the old age of Avram Avinu and David HaMelech. We can possibly suggest that in fact these two Chazal do not argue with each other. Both are in fact true. in terms of his length of life compared to the majority of people, he had an arichas yamim. However, if you compare it to his brothers, his days were shortened. The source is these two pesukim themselves. When it says Vayechi Yosef 110 shanim, what is emphasized is the fact that he had longevity and he saw grandchildren and great-grandchildren. In the second pasuk where it says Vayomas Yosef, that is written in reference to his brothers, also his father, Yaakov, who lived 147 years, Avraham Avinu, who lived 175 years, Yitzchak Avinu, who lived for 180 years. In comparison to them, his days were shortened. And that's why it says, Vayomas Yosef. Now, why did Yosef have longevity more than other people? And he saw Einiklach and Ur Einiklach? The answer is, there was a chidush by Yosef, something novel by Yosef, that wasn't there previously. And that was that Yosef was the first of the children of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov to be a melech, a king, B'Poel, which, apart from the actual title of the throne in Egypt, Yosef was a king in all matters, including also wearing a crown. And from that malchus of Yosef came the power that malchus should be given over to his descendants, till even Mashiach ben Yosef. Now, by a king, what is very important is his arichas yamim. As it says in Tehillim, chapter 61, verse 7, Yamim al yemei melech toisif, days on the days of the king's life should be added. Shnoisev k'meidoy v'ador. In other words, he should have an arichas yamim. And as the Rambam writes, that Malchus, kingship, is a Yerusha, goes and is bequeathed as an inheritance. Shenemar, as it says, Leman yarich yamim al malachtai hu uvono b'kerev Yisrael, that he should have long years on the throne, him and his children, amidst the Bnei Yisrael. And we see, therefore, that the idea of him having long life and giving that over to his children afterwards is part of Malchus. And since Yosef was a king, and from him came the power of Malchus, including also Malchus Beis David, therefore the Torah emphasizes that he had arichas yamim. In other words, Vayechi Yosef, he lived to see Bnei Shileshim, he lived to see the next generations like the king. And what's not so important is the exact years that he personally lived, because his personal years were shortened for another reason. The main thing is that he had arichas yamim to see Bnei Shileshim. And included in that is also the kings that would come from him, Mashiach, which would come from Yosef. This is made even clearer in the light of the comments of the Zohar that says, why didn't Yosef live for 147 years like his father? He only lived for 110 years. Because he gave 37 of his years to David HaMelech. David HaMelech was supposed to be born a stillborn, and yet he lived for 70 years. And that was because of the years which he received from Adam HaRishon. He received 5 years from Avraham Avinu, 28 years from Yaakov Avinu, and 37 years from Yosef. So we see in the light of that comment of the Zohar that in fact Yosef was the root of the Malchus David, because David HaMelech came from the years that were given to him by Yosef. All of this can be reflected on the Yosef of our generation. That there is given in this generation an eternal nature to the avodah of the Yosef of our generation. Vayar Yosef, Yosef sees that his avodah continues to the generations after him until the coming of Mashiach. Through the avodah of Hafotzas Hayados and Hafotzas Hamayonos, he actually sees Bnei Shaleshim Meruvim Eineklach and Or Eineklach continuing doing that work. And that's of course connected with Yud Beis Tammuz, because the Geula of Yud Beis Tammuz brings a chizuk, a strengthening to all Yidden, not just in the generation of the previous Rebbe, but to this day, where we actually see today the huge addition that came from the Geula of Yud Beis Tammuz, that the Frierdiker Rebbe came to America, and thereafter the Rebbe in Chatzi Kador HaTachton, and we see today Talmidim of the third generation and the fourth generation, unlike those who say that Chas v'Sholem there was a hefsek, a break in the Avodah, but on the contrary, as it says, Godlon bein Birkov, that Yosef raised his Eineklach right there. And we see that this is connected to the Geula al Yidei Mashiach Tzidkenu. This is most emphasized in the fact that the Yosef of our Dur lives at the end of Golus and in the number of his generation. The Frierdiker Rebbe was the sixth generation from the Alter Rebbe in Sfiras, the Sfira of Yesod, the Elef Hashishi, the 6th millennium, and that is all a hachana to the Sfiras HaMalchus, which is the Doir Hashvi, the 7th generation. And this is emphasized in the number of 110, this being the 110th year since the birthday of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and also in the number 63, because from the year Tafresh Pei Zayin, 1927, until Tafshin Nun, 1990, is 63 years. The number 63 is the number 50 plus 13. 50 is the 50 gates of understanding, Keser, and that is drawn down through the 13 attributes of mercy to all Yidden who are made up of 12 tribes plus the Shevet Levi. Samach Gimel is also Kabbalistically the name Sag, which represents the refining of the world of Tohu into a state of Tikkun, and that is a preparation for the revelation of the Shem Ab, Ayin Beis, which is the level of Atik which will be revealed when Mashiach will come. This is also connected with the capital Kuf Yud Aleph, the Psalm 111, which we start saying now after the Frierdiker Rebbe. In that capital is written, Zecher Osar Lenifla Oisav. The Tzemach Tzedek brings the Medrash on this pasuk, which says that Kol Masha Oisa HaKadosh Baruch Hu LeTzadikim Ba'olam Hazeh, everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does for the Tzadikim in this world, Eine Klum, it's nothing. Ela Zecher Oisa Lehem K'sheyasa La'olam Haba. Rather, it is a Zecher, a remembrance for what he will do to them in Olam Haba, V'tzidkosei Medes Lohad, because his righteousness stands forever. Says the Tzemach Tzedek that this pasuk refers to the tremendous miracles that happened by Yetzias Mitzrayim. They are only a zecher to the tremendous miracles that will happen when Mashiach will come, as it says, Ki meitzeischa me'eretz Mitzrayim arenu niflois. And similarly, the mitzvahs which we do today, they're just a zecher to the mitzvahs which we will do la'asid lavai. And even the Torah which we have today is a hevel, is considered just a mere breath in comparison to the Torah which will be la'asid lavai. And all of this is emphasized in the Chidush, the novelty of the number 110, that from Yosef came the continuation of the generations after him, including the generation of Geula and the Torah Chadasha of La'asid Lavai. Tavshin Nun represents the three-quarter mark of the Aleph Hashishi, 750 years into the 6th millennium. And it's a year of Nisim, and it's a Hachana to the year of Arenu Niflois, which will come afterwards. This is especially emphasized in the Shabbos, which is after Yud Beis Tammuz, especially being Shabbos Parshas Balak, in which the Sedra speaks clearly about the Malchus Beis David, and, as the Rambam says, Af Parshas Bilam Niba B'Shnei Mashichim. It's emphasized on Yud Daled Tammuz, Yodai Al Keis Ka, when there will be the Nitzochen, the victory over Amalek. It's emphasis on Tes Vav, in which Kaim Asira B'Ashlemusa, there's a full moon. The lesson of all the above. Yidden are called B'nai Melachim, sons of kings. And they're called also Yosef, Nohe Katzoin Yosef. And especially our generation, whose Nasi was called Yosef, each Yid in this world receives the crown of the king. They are the Am Mordechai, Shelo Yichra V'lo Yishtachava, who don't cower or bow down to Avodah Zarah, Vayarkivehu B'Rechei Va'ir, and just like Mordechai rode on a horse in the public domain, meaning that even in the world of disparity, even in the world where there is Alma Dipruda, it's a fractured world, a Jew rides high. And this gives koyach to Yidden today to go in the public, that they should walk as if in a situation of Geula, higher than anything that may prevent or produce an obstacle in the way of Golus, but rather they should go as if that they are the Bala Bayis over the Seviva, and they should reveal the Malchus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the world. And each one has koyches to do that in Chutz La'aretz, and especially in Eretz Yisrael, where there will be Shalom and Shalva in his days, and there will be Menuchas HaNefesh to sit and learn, revealing the Malchus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the world. And this is a Pu'ula Nimsheches, to raise Talmidim and Talmidim of Talmidim, Doros of Talmidim, until we will reveal the Yechidah of Mashiach ben David. In more detail, the Hira is as follows. Number 1, to add on in Staka in a number of 110 and also a number of 63. Number 2, to carry on the Fabrengens of Yud Beis Tammuz through Yud Daled, Tavav, Yud Zayin, until we can be Mahapech, the Shiva Asa B'Tammuz, into days of Geula, Shiurei Torah Barabim, especially in a way of Asara Sheyoshvin V'Oiskim B'Torah. We also need to learn the Maima of Asara Sheyoshvin B'Torah of Tafresh Peches, and also to learn and to say Kapitel Kuf Yud Aleph in Tehillim, and to learn the Rishimus of Tzemach Tzedek on that kapitel. V'ten l'chacham yech kamoid v'yosef midilei. Each one will add on what they understand. And each Yid receives the Keser, the Aseres HaDibros, in which there are 620 letters, including Asher L'Reyacha, the last two words, which is the emphasis on Avos Yisrael. And each Yid should learn the Keser of Torah, which are the halachas of Torah. Learning the halachas la'asuke shmaitza libe de hilchasa with iyun and with great pleasure, not in order to paskin shailas, because that is in the realm of Rabbonim, Moirei Tzedek, Moirei Hira. The Yehi Ratzon, as those Moirei Hira, those Rabbonim, should paskin the shaila of Ad Mosai, that Mashiach has to come, and especially because it's not really a shaila, because the Gemara already said that Kolu Kol HaKitzin. V'yukuyim b'poyel, the Ufaratzta, v'ola ha'poires, Mashiach who is called the Poires, should come already, and should be revealed tekef umiyad mamash.